Hi, Frank. I'll get
Hi,
your
Dr. Wright. Hi,
Huh.
everyone.
Hi, I'll get your intro done and then we can get started.
Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. We are moving on to our next talk. This is again an academic focused talk. This is Dr. Frank Materia. He is a health scientist with expertise in behavioral medicine and health psychology, mobile and digital health program intervention development, implementation science, chronic disease, and community based medicine, particularly in underserved populations. In 2023, he joined KUMC faculty in the Department of Otolaryngology, Population Health, and the Center for Health Innovations. In his appointment, he works directly with faculty, residents, fellows, medical students, and research staff to design, successfully execute, and disseminate all facets of various clinical health outcomes, innovation, and population-focused research studies. And he is here to talk to us about how you write a cover letter for your faculty applications. It was a rude awakening for me when I learned that I had to write this cover letter. I assumed it was like a throwaway thing, like you do when you write a cover letter for a journal article. And that was not the case. So, Frank, take it away. Just I'll be monitoring the chat. So if questions come in, I'll help facilitate that. And then I'm here if folks have questions in the audience. Thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Dr. Forwright, for inviting me today to chat with everyone about this. I do just want to give a shout out and a plug to the Kansas Postdoc Association. You all have been really over the past year or so doing some incredible programming for the trainees across the whole KU ecosystem. So definitely want to give credit where credit's due there. Um, yeah, I was, so Dr. Forwright invited me here today to talk about this, and I was kind of thinking how I wanted to open this. So one, thank you for the introduction. I'm at KUMC Medical Center. I'm on a tenure track faculty line in otolaryngology and pop health. But, like, who am I and what's my cred to even talk to you all about this today? So it's not just because I'm friends with Dr. Forwright and others who put this together, but I want to preface all of it with saying I am certainly not an expert. I'm a newer faculty member, and there are probably plenty of more seasoned experts who could walk you through this process and talk with you a little bit more about it. But what I can say is that over the years, I have done tons of different workshops, just like this one today. So I'm a little familiar with how some of this works. I've also mentored a lot of trainees over the years in writing cover letters for lots of different things. And today we'll be focusing on faculty cover letters in academic positions. But we've done a lot of this over the years. And I've also been on a bunch of hiring committees. So that's one really great way, if you have the opportunity to sit on one, to really see the breadth and the different types of materials and ways that people format them. But what I will say is my main cred for giving this talk today is over the past 4 years, between postdoc interviews and faculty interviews, I have written so many freaking cover letters. And, most of the time it's taking the same letter and just tweaking a couple parts for the position you're applying to. But I was sitting here today thinking, oh, I should find some examples and what should I look for? And I kind of had to do a little experiment. And so these are all the different like interviews and cover letters that I've traveled to and I've had to do over the past couple of years. So this is all very fresh. For me, I'm so glad I don't have to write another cover letter for a while, because I've done a lot of them recently. But what I'll do is just kind of take everyone through a high level of my perception of what this is and how it works. Feel free to stop me at any time with questions. We can chat afterwards as well. Um, so with that in mind, I figured I would kind of just start with like a cover letter, like what it's not. And it is definitely not a glorification or an exaltation of how incredible or perfect or you are. And let me say that another way. You absolutely want to make yourself seem wonderful, but it is not putting yourself on the highest pedestal ever. And I say this because I have seen cover letters over the year that are somewhat like kind of narcissistic in their vibe. I'll share an example. One of my mentors a few years ago during one of our lab meetings was like, I have to share this cover letter with you guys that came in, for a position. And it was this like 3 or 4 page saga of how this person was going to basically like cure cancer and change the world and like literally was God's gift to humanity. And you don't want to do that. You want to strike a balance between um, bragging up the good qualities about yourself that you have that you want to share that are relevant for the position. But what you don't want to do is over exaggerate. The other part of this is how much of your academic journey and professional journey you want to share is up to you, but you don't necessarily need to share your entire life story. So if there's something particular about your past or your upbringing that makes you an interesting candidate and is relevant to the research or teaching responsibilities you'd have, share that. However, you want to be careful, especially if you're applying to a research position, to strike this balance between research and me search. And when I say me search, what I'm talking about is just the way that we might make ourselves sound biased in how we describe what we're passionate about. So it's really, really good to sound passionate about a certain topic. Maybe you had a life experience that made you passionate about that topic, but you just want to make sure that you're keeping it professional and you're keeping it focused on the rigor and the integrity of the research you're conducting, or that you would like to conduct in this position. And like I said, what it's not is a gross exaggeration, and you don't be dishonest in it. You know, if you say you can do a particular method or a particular type of analysis, make sure you can actually do that. You want to be honest, and you don't want to look at the job posting and say, let me just tell them I'm exactly a perfect fit if you're really not. So you want to be honest as well. So that's what I think a cover letter is not, but what is a cover letter? What can it be? So it's obviously one of the many things that you send in with a packet when you apply for an academic job position. And really, the cover letter is intended to introduce you. It's, you're most likely a stranger or maybe not super close with people on some of the hiring committees that you might be applying to. So it really gives them an idea of who you are. And really, one of the main purposes is just to convey that you are really interested in the position that you're applying to. Um, we apply to a lot of positions sometimes when we're looking for a job, and some might be more desirable than others. But it's up to you how you want to tailor your letter to sounding interested in the position. But I can tell you, if you sound disinterested, it's probably not going to go very far. So you want to strike a balance about, the interest that you have in the faculty position you're applying to. The cover letter is also supposed to characterize you and talk about your background and who you are and what you've done to date, what your training has looked like, how you've started to build a program of research or teaching. And I think one of the most powerful parts of this tool and this material is that you're going to make a case for why you are just such a great fit for this position. If you have to, exaggerate stuff or make stuff up to make yourself a fit, you're not a good fit. But for positions that really are, a great match for you, that's going to come easily. Arguing, why would I be good? And so beyond those points, that's what I see a cover letter being. And the kind of broader, higher level things that you might want to talk about. What are the specifics though? What's more the nitty gritty? What do people actually write into the content of the sentences and paragraphs that live in this document? So you definitely want to share what your academic journey and what your training journey has been. So it depends on like if you did something extremely remarkable many years ago, maybe like before your doctoral training or your graduate school training, might be worth noting. Most of the time I see these, at least for faculty positions, really your journey starts at grad school when you start talking about your background and training. Um, if you have patents from, say, undergraduate research, that might be cool to mention. But if you were just an RA in a lab as an undergrad, maybe that might be a little bit too far back to stretch talking about. Definitely want to share your research experience. Um, so you want to give an idea of what type of researcher you are, what you've done. Um, Two, this includes publishing experience. So it's fine to give metrics on how many papers you've published. Grant writing, this is also like a good thing to talk about how active you've been in writing and submitting and getting grants. You also, in many cases, want to talk about your teaching experience, and this would include also your experience mentoring. There's not a job that I can think of in academia as a faculty member where we don't have some type of capacity where we mentor people. And so you definitely want to talk about that, but you want to talk about teaching, and we'll talk about different types of cover letters in a few minutes, but um, if you have experience teaching at the undergraduate or graduate level, if you've helped to develop programs or new coursework for a department, things like that, are really important things that could make you stand out. Another thing you want to do before you start writing it is go to the department who's hiring, go to their website and look at what their mission is, or go to the college level or the university level and look what the mission is and get an idea of what direction that department or college might be going in the near future. Look at the other types of job postings that are posted currently in the same place and just kind of get a flavor of what are they looking for and where do they see things going. And you definitely want to try to match yourself to be someone who is fitting into the strategic plan, the future development, and the mission of where that position is going to be housed. Another great thing to do is do some background research on your department and look at the different faculty members there and look for people who have research that's similar to you or people that have research that's different from you too, that you could see fitting in with your future grant writing plans, future types of studies you'd like to get started. If it's more of a teaching focused position, look at the other teaching faculty, look at the courses that they teach, and decide, what people would be great to team up with upon going there to help you get started, but also to help, bolster the efforts of the department you'd be going to. And then, of course, you want to talk about what research you want to do at the institution, if it's a research focused job, or if it's a more teaching focused job. What courses do they already have that they need people to teach that that you would be qualified to do? And there's some more as well. Um, Look at the university or the academic center's resources. Look at the different institutes and centers and all the different types of supports that they have for faculty to be successful, whether that's research awards or teaching institutes and certificates and things like that. Identify resources that you think would be really helpful for you to be a successful early faculty member, early career faculty member, and you can note that in the letter. You also want to talk about where you're going in the future. Where do you see your program of research developing also what courses you might like to teach and develop. So if you can spot any type of kind of lack of attention in their course, their registrar, like course roster for the department, if there's stuff that they're not offering that other places are offering that you could teach, say hey, this is a cool course that I might like to work on developing or collaborate with others to build. When it comes to your research, like what types of grants are you thinking about? What areas of the NIH or the NSF, will you be looking at? Again, coming back to who you might collaborate with in the department and who you might want to work with, are all things you want to set yourself up to say, I have some kind of idea of what I want my program of research to look like moving forward. Excuse me. Also, you want to mention in your letter that you're dedicated to mentorship. Like I mentioned before, we all end up being mentors in some way when we're in an academic position. So make sure that you say, that, I mean, be honest, don't lie, but say something about, who you've mentored already, whether it's undergraduates or graduate students, other people you've worked with, say if you worked with like third party or private sector people to do research, talk about that and talk about how you can bring those leadership skills with you into the position. And also, most positions are going to have a separate diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that you submit. But either way, it's still an important thing to at least note in your cover letter. If the position doesn't ask for a DEI statement, I highly suggest spending some space and time in your cover letter to cover that. It's really important to show that you're dedicated to advancing equity and inclusion in the position that you take. So you want to make sure that that's something that you cover as well. Okay, so as for formatting of the letter itself, I don't think that I'm trying to think, I don't think I've seen an application that said you have to do it in this format. So what I normally think back to is kind of like as researchers or as academics, what's the normal format we use for grant writing? So like the NIH formats, half-inch margins, size 11 or 12 font, normally comes to mind for me. One thing I will say, make sure that your cover letter is written on official letterhead of your current institution. This is my old institution, Children's Mercy. I am no longer with Children's Mercy. I'm at KU Medical Center, but this is an example of the letter I wrote while I was a postdoc at Children's Mercy applying to KU Medical Center. So you want to include letterhead with your current institution, your contact info, and the date. Make sure it's addressed to the right person. So sometimes in the job ad, they're going to say like, email this person as the search committee chair. Totally fine to address the letter to them and the search committee. This particular job posting I applied to didn't have a particular person noted, so I didn't address the letter to anyone, but make sure it's addressed to the right person. And for gosh sake, please spell their name right. If it's going to a particular person, make double, triple check that you've spelled their name correctly. Again, we already kind of talked about text and margins. I've used Times New Roman here in this example, but Arial is actually preferred, that type of font, by a number of people. So keep it standard. Don't use like Comic Sans or anything bizarre. And make sure the end of your letter has an image of your actual signature and like a quick blurb about your title and what you currently are. So there's different kinds of cover letters, and we'll just talk briefly about some of them. Of course, you have traditional tenure tracks, which are normally, again, somewhere, like traditionally they're 40% research, 40% teaching, 20% service. Those percentages fluctuate, but normally those positions are putting similar weight on both teaching and research. And then, of course, you have positions that are research track faculty, where you don't really have a lot of teaching expectations. And then, of course, there's teaching focused positions and teaching track faculty where the vast majority of your work is teaching, either in the classroom or the lab or other things. So there's a little bit, it's all pretty much the same at the end of the day, but there's different flavors of things you want to sprinkle into these different types of letters, and different, different levels of attention you want to pay to different things. So I'll just show you these things that I found. I actually found this online. This is from UNC's Writing Center. So I absolutely am not taking credit for this or the next slide, but they've outlined the way that you can write a research-focused cover letter really well. So of course, again, start with, the correct name and who it's going to, and address it correctly. And then they say to start with a paragraph that identifies the position you're applying for, and when you introduce yourself, and then connect your interest to the department. Then to briefly talk about your research to date. So you move into what you've done already, research-wise. Then you'd move into elaborating on your current projects, what types of awards that you've gotten, and then move into what are your future research plans and goals, and how are they going to change the landscape of healthcare or whatever sector you work in. And then after you talk about your research, then sprinkle in a little bit about teaching and mentoring. This is another part here where they say then you can throw in your philosophy on diversity in academia. And then, to wrap up, talk broadly about yourself and how everything that you want to do fits in with the department, inside and outside of the lab or the classroom, and provide examples of how, you're a hardworking, good colleague who you might want to work with, things like that. And then always thank them. So you can see here that the first 4 paragraphs, are really focused on research and talking about your program, what you've done, what you're doing, what you want to do. And this is for more of like a research assistant professor type of position. Now, the flip side is if it's a teaching assistant professor or a teaching track position, basically they recommend, this is UNC's Writing Center, doing the same thing, but just kind of flipping it. So here they want you to first talk more about your experience with teaching and different strategies that you use in and out of the classroom. This is where too, you might want to have a heavier lift on your dedication to diversity, equity, inclusion in academia and the classroom. Then they recommend discussing how involved you are with students in the broader university committee, and then you briefly explain your research interests, and then talk about, what you've published and what you've done. They missed this. I don't know if they missed this in the last recommendation, but if you've gotten any prestigious awards, like make sure those go somewhere in your cover letter. If you've presented at a society and won best paper award or best trainee award, or you've gotten an internal grant, those would be good things to mention if you have the room, and they set you apart from others. Again, always making this connection between who you are in your work and the department, their mission, and how you are going to help them be better. So other kinds of positions that you might see, there's a traditional tenure track, which I haven't showed you outlines of, but basically it has to do the same things as both of those other letters. It needs to be heavy on your research and why you'll be a good researcher. It needs to be heavy on how you're going to contribute to the teaching and the academic mission of the institution. So it really needs to contain elements of both of those things that we just looked at. Other job positions or titles that you might apply to for people who have clinical degrees, sometimes there's also a clinical track where you have a majority of your percent effort doing clinical tasks, but then you also have some research and teaching on the side as well. Um, some people call teaching track continuing tracks. Sometimes it's just research scientist positions that you might be applying to, which then you would take a heavier, focus on your research. Some people say have these positions titled instructor, but all of them kind of fall into this mix of, is it super research focused, super teaching focused, or is it a mix of the two? Okay, so this is one that I have had conversations with many people about many times, and that's the length of the cover letter. And you'll hear different things from different mentors. You'll also hear different people will have different opinions on how much credence you need to put to the cover letter. But when it comes to length, it really depends on what other, in my opinion, it depends on what other materials have been requested in that job posting. So for example, you might see a job posting that's send us a cover letter, a teaching statement, a research statement, a diversity statement. Well, they're already asking you to submit statements for teaching and research that are separate. So, in those circumstances, you might not need to expand as much upon those things in your cover letter. However, and I'll show you, but really generally, I scoured the internet before this presentation, looking for different recommendations, and on average, most sources that I'm finding are saying, yeah, like up to 2 pages is pretty average and normal. Um, Again, you might have a mentor or someone that says only 1 page, don't write anymore because people don't read it, and that's certainly possibly true. You might have a mentor that's like, write it to the maximum amount of length they'll possibly give you. Sometimes that's not even specified, so then you got to kind of like play, but up to 2 pages seems to be a good balance if you're really unsure. Again, like I said, so for example, I've applied to jobs where I did not have to submit a teaching or a research statement, but it has said, submit a cover letter up to 3 pages that describe your interest in the position and blah, 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 blah. In that case, you might go a little bit further than 2 pages because you don't have those teaching and research statements to expand upon in. So that's another thing that might fluctuate how long it is. Also, if you get a job app that doesn't ask for a DEI statement, you really want to make sure some of that gets in your cover letter as well. So this would be an example of about like, under the 2 page length limit of a cover letter where I would be submitting a research and a teaching statement separately. So I've cut, super duper in-depth information out. And then this would be kind of the length of the cover letter. I've got like a page and a half of content, and I've got the other things with the letterhead and the signature that I need. And all of the specifics about my teaching pedagogy and my research will all go in those other separate documents that I submit with the application materials. However, like I told you, I've submitted a number of applications where they haven't asked for teaching or research statements. They wanted it all in the cover letter. So that then is kind of one of these longer cover letters that ends up maybe going on to that 3rd page. Um, so again, just really read the description and the job posting and make sure you're very familiar with exactly what they're asking for. And that's going to help you kind of estimate what your length should be. So this is interesting. I experienced this more with postdoctoral position applications, but I do actually recall seeing one or two like people who were advertising jobs, say through email chains, and they've said, send a CV and a research statement to so and so at this email address. And it's like, well, what do you do if they don't ask for a cover letter? So I was like, I should brush up on this. And I looked all over the internet and I tried to get some ideas about this. And supposedly in like the private sector, like if you submit a resume, you should really submit a cover letter with it. And I can't see it hurting, but not repeating, not making unnecessary work for people. So if they don't ask for a cover letter, say you're directly emailing it to someone, You can format your email as a cover letter. Or, if you're just sending a bundle of materials, you could also just write a brief like, hello, I'm applying to this position. I've provided X, Y, and Z. Thank you. So it's up to you. If they don't ask for one, you can still provide one if you think it would be helpful as kind of like the first thing that bundles all the rest of your materials together. But that's up to you. Okay, so in thinking through those dynamics, this is what the cover letter is, this is how it works. What shouldn't you include? Don't put pictures of yourself or like bizarre graphic designs or copyrighted stuff. And all I had to do was Google like bizarre, weird cover letters, and like this popped up. So like this person, like it is so cool. If you are applying to a graphic design job, like or some type of creative department where this is the type of product you're supposed to develop, maybe then you can have at it. But for the majority of us who are scientists, both health, medical, engineering, STEM, um, don't do this. Like if it's a job you really want, it may not be the best time to take a complete risk on doing something completely out of left field. So I'd say stick to the basics when it comes to the guidance on how you should write it. Um, and I just wanted to make sure I included that. Okay, I think the most important thing that you can do with developing your cover letter is get feedback early. So get one outlined. This is how I did it. You might do it differently. I remember I outlined my cover letter. I first got examples from colleagues. So find a colleague or two who have been through this, who are willing to share theirs with you. Outline it for yourself and either draft it or get feedback on the outline from a trusted mentor, advisor, or colleague. And do that as early as you can when you're starting to think about the job process and job application journey. Because if you already have it drafted and ready, once you start seeing those job postings that you really, really like, it's already ready, it's already done. So don't only get feedback early, but get it often. Um, it totally could be of your benefit to have more than one mentor look at it for you. People have different opinions and different thoughts on how these things should be formatted. People might know, faculty that you trust might know mentors on the committees that might be reading your letter, and they might tell you like, oh, this person probably would think this is too much or too little, or so get feedback from different people. And really, if you have differing opinions from different mentors on exactly what it should look like, just make your best judgment call. All of us who have gotten to this point, um, we can trust our gut that no matter what we develop, we'll be fine. But don't think you have to please every piece of feedback you get on it. It is your cover letter at the end of the day, and you get to decide what the final version of it looks like. When it comes to submitting it, I'm sure this goes without saying, but you would be surprised how many cover letters I have read over the years that have pretty bad grammar and spelling errors, surprisingly. So please run spell check. Please read through it multiple times. And make sure it's the correct file type. Um, it might say in the job posting, we will only accept PDFs. And if that's an instruction, make sure it's a PDF. There may also be rules about how to name the file itself. So I've already seen job postings that have said like it must be titled last name underscore cover letter underscore date or something like that. So make sure you follow all those little tiny rules that might be in the posting. But furthermore, if there aren't rules, make sure the name of the file you submit makes sense. So just like make sure it's a sensible file name and not some like weird hyperlink from where it was saved and download, make sure the file name it makes sense. And just make sure like, it's ready to go if either whether it's via email or via portal. There's a number of job postings that say we will not accept materials that are emailed to us. There are a number of postings that are just by email and don't have a portal set up. So make sure you know exactly how to get it into the right people. And just again, follow the instructions in the job posting. If they're ambiguous, email anybody who's indicated in the posting or email an administrator in HR at the university. Um, because the last thing you want to do is miss something very clear and straightforward when you're applying for a job. So overall, in conclusion, these are essential for the job market. I'm sorry, but there's no way around them. Um, I've met a few people over the years that absolutely enjoy writing cover letters, but most people I've talked to think they're a pain in the butt. But the good news is once you have it written, you can just tweak it for the different positions, that you're applying to. So get it done early and often. Again, there's all these kind of written and unwritten rules and differing opinions about how we should do it. So, decide for yourself exactly which ones you want to follow and how you want it to look. And don't treat it lightly. People do actually read these. I can guarantee you people totally do read them. Not everyone reads them. Somebody, you might get a committee where nobody actually cared. They looked at your CV, they looked at how many publications you have or how many classes you've taught and just like sent you the invite. But some people do really, really in-depthly read these. And I've had in many interviews over the years, I read in your cover letter. Oh, you talked about this in your cover letter. So don't treat it lightly. It's introducing yourself and why you're good for the job. Seek advice from mentors and get feedback, and just avoid all those simple mistakes and those issues with submission. Follow the instructions, and you will be fine. So just to wrap it up, one, I want to thank the Postdoc Association so much for having me today. I really appreciated talking about it. It's not every day you get to give kind of more fun talks, that aren't just focused on the research we're doing or other topics. So thanks for inviting me to give such a neat presentation. I appreciate it. I hope I gave everybody some good information. But I just want to acknowledge my mentors, Dr. Josh Smythe, over the years, Dr. Josh Smythe, Dr. Jen Villwalk, Dr. Alex Chu, Dr. Jeanette Berkeley-Patton, Dr. Kathy Goggin, and Dr. Delwyn Catley, because collectively these people have read so many freaking cover letters and drafts from me, giving me feedback, that I'm just very fortunate to have had really good mentors. Um, so anyway, in conclusion, thank you so much. Appreciate you having me here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
That was great. Frank, thank you so much. Um, you can drop questions in the chat. If anyone has questions in the room, I'm happy to help facilitate that. I do just want to make a note to everybody on campus. We have been asked to work remote for the remainder of the day because of a water issue. So if you have the ability to take our last session remote, I am recommending that just per the university. Okay, but back to the topic on hand. In lieu of questions, or as we wait for questions to come in, I wrote my cover letter last. Is that how you did it? Is that what you would recommend?
So it's not how I did it, and it's not how I did it because I wasn't even going to start the job process, but I saw this job posting that was like incredible, and all they wanted was a cover letter. And I was like, so I ended up writing it first. I have had a number of people that, yes, have told me that they have written their cover letter after their research and teaching statements. So they know like what specifics are there. And then they know like kind of like they have an outline of what to just highlight or what to give people a taste of in the cover letter. So I think that makes sense too. I think it can go either way. It depends on the person, but um, that's actually probably a pretty good strategy, especially if you have a job application that wants both the teaching and research statements. I think working backwards that way is actually not a bad idea.
I had pulled up my cover letter to see how well I followed all of your instructions. I did want to ask. I've heard, um, I guess, different opinions on whether or not you should call out specific folks in a department that you want to work with. Could you just speak to that a little bit more about maybe the benefits, maybe some of the um, potential downsides to being really specific and how you might approach that?
Yeah, that is such a really good point. So I have actually, and I should have noted that, Dr. Forright, I have heard the same thing. So I would say if you have some type of connection, either your mentor or you have some type of connection to someone in the department, that's one thing you can actually ask them. Could we identify you in the cover letter? Or sometimes you might end up actually meeting with someone before you're interviewed about your interest in that department. So then you can also say like, I've met with so and so and discussed XYZ. Or if there's like an administrator that you meet with beforehand, you can kind of name drop that if you've had meetings with people. Um, it is weird to mention like, I want to work with this person, this person, this person if you don't know them and you've never seen them before or met them and you don't have any connection to them. But in the event you do, it could be advantageous. Two, when somebody passes you a job posting, because they want to bring you, they would love to bring you there. That's another situation where you could, name drop a little bit. But I think to be better safe than sorry, it is not a requirement. You don't need to name every specific faculty member you could see yourself working with. Sometimes it's better even just to say like higher level, your area of research in artificial intelligence or materials science or whatever, where there's already faculty in like a core. That's a safe way to go about it too.
We have a question in the chat that asks, how do you recommend aligning the cover letter to pass through artificial intelligence bots? Do you know if there I wasn't familiar with academic institutions using um AI technology for applications in the same way that um I've heard of in industry, but perhaps it is. Do you have any
I,
knowledge on
I,
that?
I don't have any knowledge on that, but it would not be surprising if that becomes a thing. So, and I don't know enough about what it looks like on the back end. Um, I'm sure there's a way you can run it yourself beforehand. But really, I would hope that at the end of the day, if everything you're writing is yours, which I highly recommend, write your cover letter mostly yourself, please. Like, you
Oh,
know,
I think they're talking about it being, like, weeded out
yeah,
through not because
yeah,
they're using, like, ChatGPT to write it, but because
right.
they're filtering out applications.
Yeah, yeah, no, but what I'm trying to say is if you write it yourself, you won't have to worry about that to begin with. Um, and this person saying, yep, they are used for filters. So, um, you know, don't use an AI bot then until you know exactly what's happening on the other end. Maybe that's my best piece of advice.
I know at least for industry, they talk about using those keywords that you find in the job applications, and so perhaps that is also part of a process in academia. Is anyone here been familiar with that process? Okay. So that's something we'll have to look into, and maybe some of our future topics can check into that. Other questions that folks have? Oh yeah, here we go.
So I just had one that was like kind of off topic a little. I'm earlier in my PhD, so I won't be doing this for a while, but what can I do now to prepare so that my cover letter is like good when I go into academia?
Yeah, never too early to start thinking about this stuff. So great question. I think there's two things you can think about. One, developing a really good mentorship relationship, and this is more for your whole application. make sure there are at least like 2 to 3 faculty members that you have really good relationships with that you're building now, who not only can give you feedback on your cover letter later, but even more so to be your references once you go to apply for jobs. So I think that's the most important thing you can start now early in your PhD is build those really solid relationships. Work super duper hard for a couple of people who you like working for, that seem to be good mentors. Find those people early, and they're going to be the people ultimately who will write your rec letters and who will help you review your cover letter later. So that's what I would say too. Just at this point in in your PhD, if you don't really know what you're going to do, if you're going to go research track or teaching track or tenure track or private sector, if you don't know at this point, that's perfectly fine. But then the most important thing to do is make sure your CV and everything you're doing is keeping you well-rounded. So make sure you're getting your pubs, you're submitting for some grants, and you're getting some experience teaching at maybe the undergraduate level, or supervising labs or things like that, working with students on research projects. Keep yourself well-rounded, because then you're going to have plenty to talk about in your cover letter eventually when it comes time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Materia. If everybody will join me in thanking Frank for this great presentation.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. And we'll take a quick break if you're transitioning to remote. Great. And then we'll finish it off with our last presentation of the day.
Bye-bye.